It, too, seems invented against the alienation of an absence. And in truth, with a white mother, the absent black father was also an absent black identity. So the references to Martin and Malcolm, your people's struggle, wake up, black man, idealize the absent black identity in the same way that brilliant scholar, generous friend, and upstanding leader idealize the absent father. This is the circumstance, then, that makes the father and the black identity virtually interchangeable as objects of his personal search. The young Obama experienced both his father and his racial identity as absences, while most people enjoy these same things as birthrights. Not only does he have to search self-consciously for surrogate versions of what others take for granted, but as he puts his identity together in this way, he will likely be trailed by the feeling that he is jerry-built, where others are naturally solid. I know a little of this feeling myself. If I was blessed to have the clarity of a strong and present black father, my experience with the black identity was more ambiguous. I grew up in the last decades of segregation, when race was a hard determinism. For the impropriety of marrying a black man, my white mother was made to live as a black woman. I was born in a black maternity ward, grew up in a black community, and went to a segregated black school. Pretty good credentials upon which to claim a black identity, if living out the oppressive fate of one's group is what nails down identity. And yet, children of interracial unions often have their identities questioned the instant they are discovered to have a white parent. Though it is rarely said openly, the white parent is often seen as a stain of inauthenticity on the black identity by both blacks and whites. Worse, this inauthenticity sometimes generalizes beyond race to indict the entire personal character. When Barack Obama is called a African, the point is not simply that he comes from a mixed-race background. It is also that he is a kind of phony, a pretender to blackness. For racially mixed blacks, the search for authentic blackness is also a search for personal credibility and legitimacy. Our era of intense identity politics means that such people live under a permanent accusation of inauthenticity, and they are consigned the Sisyphean labor of forever proving a negative, that they are not inauthentic. Immediately after college, I spent over 3 years working in Great Society social programs in what was arguably the poorest and most crime-ridden black city in America, East St. Louis, Illinois. Very soon after college, Barack Obama spent a similar number of years working as a community organizer in some of the poorest black neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago. I am sure that youthful idealism was a strong motivation in my case, and very likely in Obama's as well. Still, human motivation is always a mixed affair. And, on some level, I knew even then that I was also erecting a black identity. In East St. Louis, I was, among other things, searching for authenticity and legitimacy as a black. This was the late 60s and early 70s, when the idea of a militant black identity based on protest politics and a tight cultural racial unity took over black America. In the early civil rights era, it had been our universal humanity, not our blackness, that had made the case for our freedom. But after the civil rights victories of the mid-60s, the movement for black advancement abruptly became an identity movement. Suddenly, our race, not our common humanity, was the agent of uplift. And black power was the new faith in identity as power. All this came at me in my very early 20s, just before and during my East St. Louis years, and it cut straight to the core of my identity insecurity. On a landscape where blackness had emerged as an atavistic truth, a celebration of racial essentialism, I was suddenly standing in a territory of stark inauthenticity. After all, my mother came from upper, ever so slightly, middle class, small-town America, Jimmy Stewart territory, and qualified to be a daughter of the American Revolution, though she would sooner have died than joined. And so I came to feel that there were only two options. I could reject blackness and the identity politics that accompanied it. Clearly, I did not really believe in blackness. I thought it little more than a style of clenched fists, afros, and right-on phrases. It sought redemption in what had been a mark of shame, but it had no relationship to accomplishment. Yet to reject it implied collaboration with white supremacy, the most disgraceful sort of Uncle Tomism. To avoid this horror, the second option was simply to pretend, to go along with blackness despite my true feelings. In East St. Louis, I was still too much in need of authenticity to risk the first option, so I became immersed in an irony. I would pursue authenticity through pretense. I would go along with a blackness I did not really believe in so as to gain the acceptance I could claim as authenticity. I did not consciously do this, but this is what I did. And in fact, my mixed-race background was only an additional pressure toward this kind of duplicity. All blacks of my generation came under pressure to join the new militant identity, and many became immersed in the same irony, going along with an unexamined blackness simply to belong. Whenever collective identities become self-conscious, sharply defined, and highly politicized, people begin to survive them through duplicity. Still, for the mixed-race black, both the need to belong and the inability to believe are likely to be more pronounced. Racial authenticity will require even more duplicity and pretense. The illusion is that such people are less encumbered by the black identity than others, and this may be true for those mixed-raced blacks who choose to distance themselves from the black identity. But for those who don't, this identity is more encumbering than for other blacks because it forces the personality to accommodate more blatant contradictions. Acceptance of the racial categories in identity politics, for example, when one is in fact of two races. For the mixed-race black, today's highly politicized black identity is reachable only through a degree of self-betrayal.